In my previous devlog, I made my character run around, shoot, deal damage to enemies so they explode like piñatas, and also receive damage. I would say it was a strong foundation for the type of game I have in mind. However, I got pretty tired staring at an empty background and some random textures I use as platforms. Therefore, I decided to work on the visuals and art style of the game and make it look pretty. The first thing that I did was to look around for inspiration. There are plenty of great looking games out there, so in order to stand out I really need to create something that will catch people's attention. The type of aesthetic I'm looking for, maybe it's a bit closer to an illustrated book. Something more hand-drawn. Okay, so I started by creating a few platforms, something that will replace the textures for my current level. I intend to make a forest-like area, something a bit more twisted with strong vibes of Alice in Wonderland, where the player will encounter and fight all sorts of strange characters. After making a few platforms, I imported them into Unity and started fooling around. For the level's layout, I simply made some basic shapes in Photoshop. Now, Unity has some great tools like Sprite Shape, which allowed me to create platforms more easily and also can be great if you're using tiles. For the moment, it looks decent. Finally, the scene looks a tiny bit more like a level. Okay, so after a period of time where I tried to combine these platforms in different ways, I realized they suck so badly. They don't really work with what I initially have envisioned, plus the style doesn't fit with the characters, also too many details and it looks too busy in a way, and I haven't even added grass or bushes yet. I don't know why it took me so long to realize this, but I guess it's better sooner than later. The good part was the fact that I was still able to use these platforms as foundation for the next version. I also ditched the sprite shapes since I decided to try and use the tile maps as the base for the platforms and also use the modular sprites. I found this short video from Ori and the Blind Forest, perfectly showcasing how the scene is built and how modular everything is. Anyway, this version got significantly better. I simplified the textures and I also managed to add some layers to the scene and some vegetation. The results were, in my opinion, an improvement. But still, I don't fully like it. Being a perfectionist can be a blessing as well as a curse, since almost nothing can be good enough. At one point I simply have to let go and make a freaking decision, otherwise I will be 80 and still be working on this game. So back to the drawing board and start over. This time I decided to stylize and use a larger brush with some texture in order to create a more hand-drawn effect. I also use a thin stroke, especially for the platforms, in order to stand out more. Finally, I can see something more coming out of this. The style seems to be more of what I was looking for. I also try to remain consistent and apply the same technique to all objects. So fast forward a few weeks and I made some progress, finally. I managed to create a few assets, so there's something there to create my level. I also aim for my game to be very much animated. For the background and foreground's foliage movement, I use a shader since allowed me to create more organic movement for the larger sprites, such as bushes and tree leaves. I followed Code's Monkey tutorial to a teeth. But for some reasons I did encounter a strange issue. When the sprite, for example bush, grasses, etc. moves around, the animation is sped up significantly. For example, when I apply the shader to an object in the foreground, the speed increases when my character moves, but when it stops, the vegetation speed returns to the assigned value. So after many tests, the issue seems to appear only on orthographic view, and parallax scripts apply to each layer group. Soon as I switched to perspective mode and removed the parallax script, the issue kind of disappeared, I guess. Still not sure what caused this, since I tried many parallax scripts, and some of them were even from what Unity package has to offer. For the small grass and vegetation, however, I animated each part individually, so when the player makes contact, it moves. I also managed to make the grass interact with the weapon's bullets when the player fires, and it's a pretty nice effect. After I kept working on the level, I realized I don't want these platforms to simply float into the thin air. I thought it could be more interesting if they were attached to something. Now I know this can be a more challenging task, since you have to better plan the environment, and any potential change becomes even more difficult afterwards. But the end result can be more interesting and more creative in my opinion. For example, I used these tree branches to sustain this platform. In another case, I used another tree as a background support. Other than that, for the mood and lighting, I used pretty much everything Unity has in store, from shape lights, spotlights, sprite lights, to post-processing effects. Also, I wanted my character to blend in and be very much part of the environment. That's why I allowed the sprite lights to have an effect on the player as well. There are still some fixes that need to be done, but for the moment I got pretty tired playing with lights, planting grass and bushes around, and I should probably move on to something else, such as AI, enemies design, a more polished gameplay, and many other things. Thank you very much for watching. Please share your thoughts of what do you think of this art style and everything I built until this point. See you next time, bye bye.